My son texted me, "You won't be joining us." My wife prefers to keep it only her family. After I had paid for the entire vacation.so, before takeoff, I froze the travel fund. They boarded the plane, the card didn't. That message came in at 11:02 p.m., 2 nights before the family trip I had been planning, funding, and dreaming about for 3 years. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, reading glasses perched on the tip of my nose, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet. I had just finished packing the last set of travel-sized sunscreen bottles into the little zippered bags I'd labeled by hand, one for each grandchild. My hands were still sticky with tape from wrapping souvenir bags that said, "Aloha, Grandma loves you." Then my phone buzzed again. "Don't take it the wrong way, Mom. It's not personal. It's just simpler this way." I didn't reply. I just stared at the glowing screen until it dimmed to black. He didn't call. He didn't say thank you. He didn't even bother to lie with kindness, just a cold, quiet reshuffling of family where the woman who raised him had somehow become, not part of her family. I had known things were changing. It wasn't just the way Tanya, my daughter-in-law, corrected me in front of the kids, or how she rolled her eyes whenever I told stories about when their grandpa and I first visited Hawaii on our honeymoon. It wasn't even how she started hosting holidays at her mother's house, and forgot to tell me until the day before. No, what truly told me everything I needed to know was the way she looked past me, not through me, past me like a waitress who's already dropped off the check. Still, I never thought Nathan, my son, would go along with it. He had once written me Mother's Day cards that made me cry. He used to bring me pink tulips every March, even after moving out of state. When he was a boy, he told his teacher I was his best friend. I still have the picture he drew in 2nd grade, me in a cape, with the words, "My mom saves the day." Apparently, I wasn't part of that story anymore. I looked at the small duffel bag I'd packed for myself, 2 sundresses I hadn't worn in years, a photo of my late husband I planned to set on the dinner table during our beach night, and a small box of matches for the lavender candle I'd bought to light in his memory. I had imagined it all. The family standing barefoot on the sand as the sun melted into the horizon. My grandson holding my hand and asking, "Did Grandpa love the beach too?" And I would have told him, he loved it enough to bring me here before we could afford it. He loved it because he shared it with me. But that moment wouldn't happen now, because I wasn't invited. I had paid for the beachfront villa. I had booked the flights, organized the airport transfers, the luau tickets, the snorkeling lessons, the breakfast baskets. I had spent hours on the phone with a travel agent, making sure the beds were soft enough for the kids, and the walkways flat enough for Tanya's mother's bad knee. And now, I was just a line item crossed off the list, the ATM that wired the funds and then quietly disappeared. The clock ticked toward midnight. The house was dark around me, but I didn't turn on the lights. The under-cabinet bulbs cast soft shadows across the counters I had scrubbed earlier. For a long moment, I didn't feel anger, or even sadness, just shame, the quiet, aching kind that makes you feel foolish for still hoping. I thought about calling him. I even picked up the phone, but what would I say? That hurts? He already knew. Please let me come. No. I couldn't beg, not after all I had given, so I set the phone down. I stood up, walked slowly to my desk in the den, and opened my old laptop. The screen blinked awake, slow, but familiar. I opened the folder labeled Hawaii Travel Fund. There it was, $21,763.84. The total I'd been building toward since the day I retired. It started with $10 bills tucked away in envelopes, then selling old furniture, then tutoring English online at night. Every single dollar had gone into that trip. I had linked every payment, the villa, the flights, the services, to one primary account, mine, because I trusted them. Because I thought trust was something I had earned. The cursor blinked. I hovered over the button that said freeze account. One click would pause all payments. One phone call would stop the trip, but I didn't click, not yet. Instead, I opened a blank document and started typing. Not a response to Nathan, not a plea. A list of women from my church who hadn't left the state in years. Carol, whose son hadn't spoken to her since she got cancer. Louise, who buried her husband last fall and still brought his photo to Bible study. Frances, who helped raise her grandkids but wasn't invited to their graduations. And Beverly. Sweet Beverly, who told me no one had ever taken a picture of her on the beach. I saved the file, then went back to the bank page. I clicked freeze. Are you sure you want to pause all linked transactions? Yes, all linked cards will be disabled immediately. Yes, and just like that, it was done. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath. Then I reached for the souvenir bag I'd made for my youngest grandson. I took out the keychain and placed it on the table. Then I unwrapped the others, one by one. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself imagine a different kind of trip, one where I wasn't unwanted, not a burden, not an afterthought, but a host. And I smiled. Not out of revenge, but out of something stronger, clarity. It started with a jar. Old mason jar I kept behind the flower in the kitchen cabinet. I called it the dream jar, though no one knew that but me. Every time I skipped something small, a movie rental, a new pair of shoes, a bottle of vitamins, I'd take that money and slip it into the jar. It wasn't much at first, $5 here, 10 there, but over time, it grew quietly, like hope tends to do. 3 years I saved. I canceled my cable. I stopped buying things I didn't need, because I was saving, not just for a trip, but for a second chance. I stared out at the birdbath James had made from an old stone bowl and a chipped saucer. It used to sparkle in the mornings, alive with finches and robins. Now it was just still water, layered with fallen leaves. I thought about cleaning it, but the thought passed. There was no one to notice anymore. The house was too clean, too quiet. Every surface gleamed from my nervous hands trying to scrub away what couldn't be erased. I wanted noise. I wanted a slammed door, the TV humming, Nathan's voice from down the hall saying, "Mom, where's my blue shirt?" But all I had were my thoughts, looping endlessly around those words. You've already done your part by paying my part, like a bill settled. Like a chapter closed, I wandered through the living room, pausing by the photo wall. There we were, the three of us, frozen in happier times. Nathan in his little league uniform, grinning. James behind him, arm around my waist, sunburnt and laughing. We'd built a life from almost nothing, and somehow, somewhere, it had slipped through my fingers. I tried to remember the moment it happened, when I became an accessory instead of the center. Maybe it was after James died. Maybe it was the first time Nathan said, "Tanya's mom does it differently," and I realized I was being compared. Or maybe it wasn't one moment at all, but a slow erosion, the kind that happens when no one is looking. I boiled water for tea. The kettle screamed like it was mourning with me when I sat down. The lavender candle I'd packed for the trip caught my eye. I lit it anyway, though I didn't know what for. The wax melted slowly, scenting the air with what was supposed to be peace. I opened my laptop again. The itinerary was still there, the list of names staring back at me. Nathan. Tanya. Their children. Tanya's parents. Her sister. Her sister's boyfriend. All accounted for. All included. All family, apparently. I zoomed in again, scanning line by line, as if my name might appear if I looked hard enough. It didn't. Something in me went very still. I closed the laptop softly and whispered to no one, "So that's it." I walked to the closet, pulled out my half-packed suitcase, and unzipped it. My clothes smelled faintly of detergent and hope. I took them out slowly, one by one. The sun hat. The linen dress I bought on sale. The travel-sized sunscreen. James's photo, smiling with his head tilted back to the sky. I placed it on the table beside the candle. I tried, love, I whispered. God knows I tried. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere, a dog barked. The world kept moving. When the phone rang, I knew it was her before I answered. Tanya's voice came through, bright and brittle. "Hi, Marilyn. Just checking in before we go. Everything good with the payment?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I said quietly, "Yes. It's done." "Oh, perfect," she said, relief dripping from her tone. "You're such a lifesaver." "Really? We couldn't have done it without you." She didn't mean it. She meant we couldn't have paid for it without you. I almost asked if Nathan was there, if he knew what she was doing. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Tanya, did you leave me off on purpose?" The pause was sharp enough to cut. "Finally," she said, her voice sweet but final, "we just thought maybe it'd be too much travel for you. You deserve a rest. You've done enough." Done enough. When she hung up, I stood there, phone still in hand, staring at my reflection in the dark window. My own eyes looked foreign. That night, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because something deeper had replaced the hurt, an understanding, maybe, or a letting go. I took the empty jar from the counter, the one I'd fed for years with small sacrifices. I turned it upside down, letting the last coin roll across the table. It stopped by James's photo, reflecting the candlelight. For the first time in years, I felt something like clarity. They were gone, but I was still here, and maybe that had to mean something. I sat in that quiet house, feeling the weight of every silence, every exclusion, every forgotten invitation, and then I whispered into the emptiness, "You may have left me out, but I'm not done." The next morning, before the sun rose, I opened my laptop again. I typed Hawaii, solo trip packages into the search bar. When the list appeared, I smiled faintly. Maybe I couldn't bring the family together again. Maybe that dream had died with James. But I could still bring myself back to life, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. And for the first time, it didn't make me flinch. Family only. The words that used to gut me now just sounded like truth. Their truth, not mine. I set the phone down and let the silence in the house stretch. It wasn't empty silence anymore. It was the sound of space being reclaimed. At exactly 8:14 a.m., I opened the banking app again. My finger hovered for only a second before I pressed confirm freeze. The blue icon brightened, and the system confirmed all linked cards disabled. Manual authorization required to resume transactions. I closed the app, set the phone face down, and poured myself another cup of tea. The peppermint steam curled upward, filling the kitchen. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I just breathed. At 8:32, the first notification came through, a failed payment alert from the airline's automated system. Then another from the rental company. Then the resort. One after another. A soft, rhythmic chain of denials, and somewhere, in the echoing halls of LAX, my son and his perfect wife were learning what silence can do. I imagined the scene as calmly as I'd imagined the fire pit by the sea. Tanya's voice rising, clipped with panic. Nathan fumbling with his phone, confusion clouding his face. The airline rep explaining, "I'm sorry, sir, but the card is declining." The children watching, half bored, half anxious, and me, here, still as the bird bath. Still as the woman who had been erased. Still as someone who no longer needed to prove her worth. The call started at 8:47. I didn't answer. The first was Nathan, 3 rings, then voicemail. The second was Tanya. Longer this time. She left a message, her tone sweet and strained, the way people sound when they're trying not to scream in public. "Hi, Marilyn, it looks like there's an issue with the travel account. The cards aren't going through. Maybe something with the bank? Can you please check?" Click. Then, 2 minutes later, a text from Nathan, "Mom, something's wrong. Can you call me back ASAP?" I put the phone on silent. Set it beside James's photo. It vibrated again. Then again. Then stopped. By 9:10, the notifications had slowed. By 9:20, they had ceased. The quiet returned, full and complete. I took out my notebook, the one I used to track expenses, and turned to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote in steady, deliberate ink, "New Beginnings Fund." Below it, I listed what I wanted for myself. Not them. Me. A new garden bed in the backyard. A weekend by the coast. The watercolor class I'd always wanted to take. A ticket, one ticket, to Hawaii, no villa, no itinerary, no matching shirts. Just me and the ocean James had once loved. By the time I finished, the sunlight had shifted across the floor, a long golden stripe warming my feet. I hadn't noticed how bright the house could be when it wasn't full of waiting. I turned my phone face up. There were 12 missed calls, 5 voicemails, and 1 final text. From Nathan, "Mom, we can't board. They're saying payment is frozen." "Why would you do this?" I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, not angry, not defensive, just honest, "Because you forgot who paid for the bridge you burned." Then I turned off the phone. Outside, the finches had returned to the birdbath. They dipped their heads, splashing tiny ripples across the surface. For the first time in a long while, I smiled. The trip was theirs no longer. But the peace, the stillness, that was mine. That evening, I opened my laptop one last time and booked a small rental cottage on the Big Island. Just 1 bed. Ocean view. 1 ticket. 1 name, Marilyn Rose Monroe. This time, the only person left off the list was everyone else. The mug was chipped. It always had been. James once said it gave it character. Nathan used it to bring me breakfast in bed the morning he turned 9. Burnt toast, too much butter, orange juice in a wine glass. That mug sat in front of me again, decades later, cooling coffee inside. The screen kept lighting up. I didn't look away. I watched them, frame by frame, like strangers in someone else's vacation reel. Tanya's mother grinning beside an airline sign as though she were walking the red carpet. Kids jumping, luggage stacked, Nathan's arm around her waist, their happiness, paid for by me. Then the text came, "Hey Mom. Weird error at check-in. Can you check the travel account real quick?" I didn't reply. 5 minutes. Another message, then more cards declined. Multiple times. Can you see anything? Still, I said nothing. At 8:27 a.m., I set my phone face down. Their flight was at 10:45. I pictured them at the counter, each beep of denial louder than the one before. Tanya's mother's lips tightening. Nathan pretending he was still in control. Mom, I don't know what you did, but if this is because of the text, can we please talk? No apology. No admission. Just panic. Silence has a texture when it's deserved. It vibrates. The email came next. Dear Miss Monroe, we've processed your cancellation request. Account frozen, charges reversed. No further action required. For the first time that morning, I exhaled. They wouldn't be welcomed. Not there, maybe not ever. At 10:40 a.m., Nathan's message blinked. We're boarding. Please call me. I didn't. They flew, without a place to land. By noon, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls. Nathan. Tanya. Her mother. I didn't listen. I went for a walk instead. Birds were chirping. A neighbor asked if I had travel plans. Not yet, I said, but soon. The next day, the message softened. Look, maybe we messed up, okay? The kids are excited. Please just unlock the account. We can talk when we get back. Forgiveness with conditions. Apology postponed. They wanted me to fund their joy while they buried mine. So I didn't reply. The refunds trickled in like confessions. Resort. Airline. Tours. Chef. Luau's all reversed, all mine again. My travel fund, once drained by love, was full again, but this time, love wouldn't be blind. I opened my old notebook, the same one that still smelled faintly of James's cologne. I wrote 3 words: the forgotten women. Carol, 5 Christmases alone. Frances, still wearing her ring. Beverly, sleeping beside her brother's hospital cot. Nora, who said invisibility was worse than pain. Lucille, never seen the ocean. And Di, who once drove me to the clinic, refused. Repayment. 6 names. 6 phone calls. 6 stunned silences. You want to take me where? Hawaii, dear. For 1 week. But why me? Because someone should. Because you matter. The villa overlooked the ocean. Palm trees swayed like slow dancers, salt in the air. I unpacked a photo, James, smiling mischievously, and placed it at the head of the dining table. No one asked me to move it. That night, we sat under hanging lights, laughter cutting through the sound of waves. Carol refilled everyone's wine. Beverly toasted to not cleaning up after anyone. Frances cried at the view. We didn't talk about who forgot us. We talked about who we remembered. We didn't compare scars. We revealed the strength beneath them. And James, my James, watched over us, his smile reflecting in the wine glasses, as if to say, finally, you're seen. Somewhere in the sky that night, a flight returned home empty-handed. But here, at this table, every seat was finally full. The 7th candle flickered before I even struck the match. James's photo watched from the center of the table, his smile unchanged, his eyes reflecting the flame before it existed. Each night, we lit 1 candle beside him. Each woman spoke a truth she needed 3 decades ago. You're allowed to rest. You don't have to earn love. You are not invisible. By the final night, the table was a constellation of memory. Wax pooled like melted time outside, the sea exhaled, and the moon painted our wrinkles in silver. Nathan's email arrived 3 days later, but I read it after the waves. The scent of plumeria was still tangled in my hair. Half a pineapple was softening in the fridge. I'd unpacked just enough to stay unready. Subject, just want to clear the air. Hi, Mom. We're back now. Things didn't go as planned. Tanya says hi. She didn't mean to exclude you. You know how she gets about structure. Anyway, we're in a bit of a bind financially. If you're able, could you maybe consider returning the deposit? We're still family. Family. I read it once, twice, a third time, until the words stopped making sound. They wanted a refund. Not a reckoning. The ocean hummed outside the window, steady and unbothered. A bird brushed the windshield James bought for our 35th anniversary. It sang a single, shimmering note that was apology enough for the universe. I closed my eyes and saw the table again. 6 women. 6 candles. Bread being passed. Laughter in soft waves. No one needing to be understood. No one asking for repayment. Only presence, only peace. Nathan's voice played in my head as I poured iced tea into a glass. If you're able, could you maybe consider returning the original deposit? as if love were an account you could withdraw from without notice. As if mothers didn't fund the world with silence and then get erased from the frame. I checked the old records, every payment, every booking, mine.my name, my account, my quiet sacrifice. They had deposited nothing but entitlement, and still, they wanted interest. That night, the sea whispered like memory itself. Francis was telling a story about the wrong bus and the right groom. Carol was teaching Beverly to hula, her laugh skipping like a record. Dole hummed a lullaby to no one in particular, and Nora, sweet Nora, wrote a postcard to herself, addressed to a home that had stopped expecting mail. I watched them and thought, this is what family looks like when no one needs to impress anyone, just presence, just joy, just permission to be. Love doesn't shout. It lingers. It refills your cup quietly while you're not looking. It's a candle that keeps burning even when the table is empty. Later, I found myself holding the match again, the lavender candle, the last one. I said, this was supposed to be for them, for my family. But maybe it was always meant for this. The flame caught, stuttered, then steadied. Wax dripped. Beverly reached for my hand. I didn't think I'd feel this again, she whispered. Peace. And James, still watching, smiled like he'd known all along. Nathan's message sat unopened again, now buried beneath the travel receipts. If you need to explain why you won't refund betrayal, the person asking never deserved an explanation in the first place. Outside, the tide rolled in, collecting everything unspoken. I didn't chase it. Some things deserved to be carried away. The waves didn't ask for permission, they came anyway, slow, deliberate, curling around my ankles like old promises finally fulfilled. The candle still burned behind me, a small, defiant light against the wind. Beverly's voice lingered in the salt air. Peace, she whispered. Gratitude. Like I mattered. I hadn't expected it to come from her. Someone like me? I asked. She smiled through the tears. Someone who knows what it's like to give everything and still be left outside the door. I didn't answer. I just held her hand tighter. Sometimes silence is the purest language between those who bled the same way. We walked, barefoot, quiet, carrying little things that had meant everything once, a seashell, a ribbon, a folded scrap of paper with a single name. No ceremony. No script, just the sound of waves closing old wounds. We formed a circle in the sand. I didn't speak to them, not even to James. I spoke to her, the woman I used to be. I'm not sad anymore, I said, and it was true. The anger was gone too. Evaporated like the tide that forgets its own edge. I wasn't waiting for Nathan's call or Tanya's understanding. I wasn't rehearsing forgiveness or craving recognition. I had stopped carrying their noise. That email still existed somewhere, I suppose. That pathetic exchange rate between apology and convenience. Could you maybe return the deposit? They called it family. I called it transaction. I thought about all the times I paid for peace and called it love, all the birthdays spent uninvited, all the holidays where I stood at the edge of my own home, all the ways I taught them to take from me, kindly, quietly, consistently. Kindness breeds entitlement. So I stopped breeding it, and in that stopping, I didn't turn cold, I turned free. The ocean tugged at the sand beneath me, whispering, let it go. So I did. I let go of the dream of being included. I let go of the house I helped build but never belonged to. I let go of the table that never saved me a chair. All that remained was what I had chosen. 6 women. A glowing villa. James's eternal smile framed in walnut. A heart no longer begging to be seen. I turned to them, my circle of survivors. My mirror tribe. We were the forgotten who remembered each other, the invisible who became light, and I thought I was never left behind. I simply found the ones who were walking my way. So listen. If this story touches something buried in you, if you've ever been erased and had to write yourself back in, you belong here. This is Grandma True Stories, where silence becomes strength, where memory becomes power, where women like us stop waiting for the world to listen and start speaking anyway, because when a grandma speaks, the world finally does.